What is going on, Crimson Tide fans? This is the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports, and my name is Chris Daughtery. Make sure you guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that sub button for me. We're going to be talking Alabama football all off season long. Spring practice is going on right now. That's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. Practice number 2 went down today. We got a lot of video out from different beat reporters and things like that. So just, combing through the video, I want to talk about a couple things that I saw that really did stand out to me. Also going to talk about some recruiting updates. A 4-star running back has set an official visit with the Crimson Tide. And also, will the SEC go to 9 games conference schedule? We'll talk about all that on today's video. First thing I want to talk about, though, is some practice observations. I really do think from, it is only practice number 2. We're only seeing, couple clips and things like that from these guys running through different, position group drills. But I do think the cornerback room for Alabama this year is going to be a real position of strength. Last year, going into the season, it was very nerve-wracking. Because you didn't have a lot of depth. You had a lot of guys go into the transfer portal after Nick Saban retired. You had Zabien Brown step up as a freshman. I'm always very iffy, putting freshmen out there, especially in the, defensive backfield, especially at that cornerback spot in particular. Yeah, Jalen Mbakwe, played a little bit as well. He was also a freshman. Domani Jackson, he was coming into Alabama looking for that first legit breakout season for him. He's going to be out for spring practice, but that does give an opportunity for some of these younger backup players to get more reps and develop now rather than in season, when a lot of that is focused more on, game planning, make sure those starters know what they're doing, making sure people know where they need to be and that they can focus on some of those, technique kind of things right now. Because right now, is when, it's really okay to make a lot of those mistakes. You learn from them, you move forward, you get better. Charlie Potter even pointed out that Dijon Jones worked with some of the safeties today, and I think that makes a lot of sense. You got Keon Sabb out for spring practice as well, and that's just going to bring a lot of versatility that we know Kane Womack really likes from this DB room. Going into last season, there was just a lot of unknown. And I think what you got from both Zabien Brown and Domani Jackson last year was just massive. I thought Domani Jackson had a phenomenal season. I thought he had a good enough season to possibly go to the NFL draft. Chose to come back, whether or not that was due to a little pay raise from NIL, or, some of these scouts just did not have him as one of those top cornerbacks. So I'm fine with that. I'm so glad Domani Jackson came back for you. Zabien Brown now going into his second season now with Alabama. And I think you also just continue to look at the depth on this team. You brought in Cam Calhoun from Utah. He had a pick. We saw day 1 of practice, and it looks like he can be a guy that could immediately play for Alabama. But when it comes to the depth, there's just a lot of guys there, and it makes me wonder how they're going to utilize getting some of those best players on the field that are in that cornerback room, because I'll stress again, Kane Womack really loves the versatility, and he may not be playing corner. Maybe he plays that Husky role if something happens to Red Morgan or something like that. So, I wouldn't doubt that they are trying to get this kid on the field somehow, some way. You look at the cornerback depth chart, I really love the starters. I got Zay Mincy up there, at strong safety right now just because Keon Sabb is out for the spring and he is hurt. I would assume Keon Sabb, Bray Hubbard are going to be your 2 starters there at safety. But you also got to think a guy like Chuck McDonald is not yet on campus for Alabama. And I was very impressed just looking at some of those first videos of a guy like Dijon Lee, 6'4", 197 pounds. When I saw that, I looked over at one of our other hosts here at Chat Sports, Tom, and I was like, man, how many 6'4", 197-pound corners are there in the NFL? And he was like, there's not that very many. So, I really like what I see there from Alabama in this cornerback room. You also got Red Morgan going into year 2. I thought he was very impressive last year as well. I definitely think this defensive backfield, especially at that cornerback spot, really the safeties too, just this entire group right here, I think it's going to be a real strength for Alabama going into next season. So let me know here at the pinned comment of today's video, guys. Will the cornerback position in particular be a strength for Alabama this season? Type Y for yes or N for no. Like I said, it's the pinned comment of today's video. So that ad's going to come here on YouTube. That is totally fine. You guys can ignore that. Get down there and let me know what you guys think. Next up on the show, going through a little bit of recruiting rumors here. Derreck Cooper, 4-star. They've got him listed as an athlete right now. Alabama is currently going after him as a running back, but he has set an official visit for June 6th through the 8th. So that's a very positive thing. Almost top 30 players. So definitely by the time those final recruiting rankings come out, there is a chance he could be in that 5-star category. Whether or not that happens, we're just going to have to see. He's got his entire senior season. That's going to have to, he's going to have to go through the process and everything like that. But this is definitely a kid that Alabama would love to get in their 2026 recruiting class. Love his size right now. He's 6'1", 205 pounds, and he was at one time committed to Georgia. He's had multiple in-home visits with both Kalen DeBoer and Robert Gillespie, your running backs coach there. And this is a guy that's also very versatile, especially in the high school ranks. He's a two-way player, plays on both offense and the defensive side of the ball. Last season, 124 carries, 905 yards, 13 touchdowns on the ground. Also was very good catching passes out of the backfield as well. 9 receptions for 156 yards. Also added a touchdown through the air there as well. And on the defensive side of the ball, 46 tackles, 10 TFLs, 4 sacks. This is a guy that is very, very, he's a very good athlete. Alabama would love to get him in this 2026 class as a running back. Some of the other official visits he has set up right now, he'll be at Auburn on May 16th, Miami on May 30th, Georgia on June 13th, and then Ohio State on June 20th. So Alabama right there, kind of right there in the middle. A lot of the times you like to get some of those later visits, but, it is what it is. Hopefully Alabama can blow him out of the water and get him in this 2026 class. Before we continue on to some SEC scheduling topics here, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. You guys can get up to 50% off on Alabama hoodies right now just by going to chatsports.com/CFB hoodies. They got some pretty solid deals on there right now. So if you're in need of a new Alabama jacket, just go over to chatsports.com/CFB hoodies. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's video. Should also be a little clickable link over there in the corner as well. So go over to Fanatics, get up to 50% off on some Alabama gear. Last thing I want to talk about on today's show, a possible 9-game SEC schedule. SEC leaders got together in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago to discuss the possibility of moving to a 9-game SEC schedule. It sounds like to me the only way this is going to happen is if the SEC gets those 4 auto bids that they're looking for the college football playoff expansion. And Greg Byrne was actually asked about this, Alabama's athletic director, and basically the question was like, can the SEC go to a 9-game schedule even if they don't get those auto bids? This is what Greg Byrne had to say just last week. He said, I think there's a way to get to 9. We'll see if it makes sense for the conference as a whole. We're 1 vote in there, but again, we've scheduled as though we're planning on playing 8 conference games. And I do think, in the past and now in the future, Alabama has done a phenomenal job at scheduling some of those non-conference games. Now, with an 8-game SEC schedule, you got 4 weeks there that are non-conference game. Alabama usually schedules 2 of those for some of those, previously Power 5, now going to be Power 4 schools. The other 2 are, those Mercer, type of games. But I put some, decent games. Alabama still has that 1 game with South Florida as well that they'll be playing next year. I just left that off this list because I don't think we should be playing South Florida either. But you got the home and home coming up here with Florida State. You'll finish off the home and home with Wisconsin coming up this season. You got a home and home with West Virginia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Notre Dame. You also play them at home in 2030 as well. So, what I would really love to do is get us to a point where we're playing only Power 5 games. I understand everybody talks about the SEC schedule being very tough. Look, I'll be completely honest. At this point, the top of the SEC is really good, but the bottom of the SEC, let's be honest, like they're pretty much the same when you're playing the Arkansas, the Kentuckys, outside of last year, maybe the Vanderbilts. They're in that same range as like an Indiana, in my opinion. So while I agree the SEC at the top is a very strong conference, I don't necessarily know if it still applies to the bottom of the conferences as well. So let me know here in the comments section, how many conference games should the SEC play? Type 8 or type 9 here in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think. Now, this is kind of the possibility for a potential 14-team playoff here. The SEC and the Big Ten would both get 4 auto bids apiece. The ACC and the Big 12 would get 2 auto bids apiece. That's most likely going to be the top 2 teams playing for the conference title there. I've even seen some things thrown out there to maybe the SEC and the Big Ten have like a little tournament for the SEC and Big Ten championships. I think that's a fun idea. Whether or not that happens or not, don't necessarily know there. They'll also have the highest ranked Group of 5 champion. I've said this a bunch. I think you get the Group of 5 out of there. Let them have their own thing. I don't think they need to be up here with the big dogs. And really, the only difference between 14 and a 16-team playoff expansion, there would just be 2 more at-large bids there. So definitely, most likely, going to get Notre Dame in there and then some other teams as well. You guys know how I feel. I hate playoff expansion, but when it comes to TV deals and ratings and things like that, more money in the pockets from those things, that's just going to be better in terms of, those NIL dollars and things like that when you get to that revenue sharing stage. So we'll see what happens, whether or not the SEC goes to a 9-game schedule or not. I, for one, would be for that.